on Nutty the Iguana and had it rain on stage, which shocked the hell out of the audience when all of a sudden
Did
it's
you
raining.
really?
Oh yeah, there's Shannon up there. Here's your guide, Mr. Shannon. He looks up and it just starts raining on him as he's got a light.
You don't
on.
even see that in the bigger theaters in a lot of places.
I don't have Bob Binghamon, who does our sets, a genius.
How does he do that?
He told me it was going to rain on stage, and I said, "You're crazy."
Yeah, right.
It rained on
You're
stage.
Like, oh my God.
It rained on stage. So we've done. We opened the theater on September the 10th, and this is another cool story. On September 10th of 2010, we opened the theater with Last Rites. Mm-hmm. So it's about, I guess, and we had delays and all these things. Even up to the September 10th date, it was a little shaky. And my mother calls me one day and she goes, "Why did you pick September 10th?" And I said, "Well, it was the first Friday after Labor Day. And theater people, we know that's when the theater season starts."
That's when they
and
go.
she goes, "Do you know that was your grandparents' wedding anniversary?"
There's all these fateful connections
Yeah,
that you're
it's
talking
like,
about here.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so that was the final, like, okay, we're in the right place, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that night, we had 100 people in the theater. We had kids from the neighborhood outside playing across the street in, I forget, they were dressed in butterfly wings or something, running around the neighborhood. We had all these pennants and balloons and everything all around. And we opened the first theater, made for theater, professional theater in Camden, New Jersey in over 100 years. Opened that night.
Wow.
Michael Doyle did all that research. I did not know that we were the first theater in over 100 years to be built, but we were.
Imagine
Just for
that.
theater, not like like Rutgers with the Gordon. That's a multi-purpose. This is just for theater.
Just for theater. And in a space that your grandfather
In my grandfather's
owns.
bar. So if you would have come to Last Rites, you would have been sitting in my grandfather's bar, watching my grandfather's bar. You literally, when the lights went down, went back in time 40 years to exactly where this play was happening.
The exact spot.
Exact spot. So if there were street sounds, good.
All right. Hey, that works.
That works. Yeah, kids just
all
ran
good.
past. Okay. Yeah, that's what they did at the time. So that's how we became who we are. And in the past few years, 2 seasons ago, you were talking about my plays. I always want to do a play of mine a year.
Yeah. And that's what you've done. I mean, from what
Yeah.
I'm looking at here, I mean, in terms of like you did Last Rites the first season, and then the next one was Indoor Picnic.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
Indoor Picnic is a play that is set in my father's Polish and from the Polish section of Camden.
Yeah.
And what I did is I wanted to write a play about that side, not my mother's side, the waterfront south side, but his side. And it all focuses on a Polish club that my dad used to be president of and these members. And what you see, it's 1968, and you get to see what it was like. That was kind of the end as things were starting to change, where everything's goofy and fun and silly. And there were Polish picnics, and there's all this stuff going on. And then in Act 2, it's 10 years later. And now the club that these guys hang out in, now you see that they actually all have to get out of their cars together to go and turn the lights on because they were afraid they would all be hit over the head.
Yeah.
And you get to see, again, another side of Camden. But what I did differently in Indoor Picnic that I did not do in Last Rites is I really touched on race. And we did not shy away from race.
Yeah.
And one of the characters is Flossie, who's their African-American cleaning woman. And you get to see the talk behind her back from some of these guys. And then at the end, this really beautiful thing happens in Act 2 when it's 10 years later and something happens to her husband and the guy who's the biggest racist at the club, who they're always at each other's throat. And in Act 2, she ends up saving him from a really bad situation. And you get to see that, redemption is possible no matter how deep I almost said the crime, but that to me is what it is.
Yeah.
And so we touched on Camden from another side with that play.
And you're bringing in the audience, maybe of people that don't necessarily go to the theater. I mean, it's not like your traditional theater-going audience.
We have some, and then we have people now
but it's
who are
a
coming
well-rounded audience,
Yeah.
and you're introducing theater in a lot of cases to the neighborhood, not just in the theater itself, but through the plays.
Right. And I'm just happy to be able, like with those two in particular, I've written now 4 of my plays are set in Camden.
Yeah.
And I get to tell Camden stories, and so they all get newer and newer, like their 60s and 80s. And then Fortune Cookies, which is going to be done this year, is set in the 90s. And then Express Tracks, which we just closed in January, is set today, 2013. Well, 13, 14. It can be whenever.
Yeah.
I wrote it in 13, but it can technically be set whatever year.
Yeah. Let's talk about Express Tracks, because we're going to actually watch some clips from that.
Sure.
I saw the play, and it really, really struck me. I mean, I was thinking about it for days afterward, and every time it comes up, I have more thoughts about it. And I saw it the last day of the run, and it was a packed house, multicultural audience. And like you said about your other plays, it didn't shy away from anything. Where did you get the idea for Express Tracks?
Express Tracks came to me first a few years ago on a beautiful February Friday. And it was the first rallies against our certain emperor who thinks he's the governor of New Jersey. So I decided to get onto it.
Who's that?
Who would that be? So I decided to take a ride on the River Line train to go to Trenton to this big rally that was happening. So I got on the train, and I'd never taken the River Line before. So I got on at the stadiums.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous day, and there's a man sitting there. Good morning, good morning. Wow, this is nice, beautiful. Take off, we go to Cooper Street. 3 students get on, all with their backpacks. They got the buds in. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And then we hit Broadway, and the world changed. And 3 people came crashing, literally crashing onto the train, who became my characters, Jameer and the Reverend and Willow. And he was just basically screaming, I'm going to go back and effing cut him. And the other one's grabbing his arm and trying to keep the knife from coming out of it. This is at 10 in the morning.
It's a real story. I mean, this is the real deal.
Yeah. And his girlfriend, who Willow became my character, was trying to calm him down. Yeah. Turned out he was on his way to his parole hearing in Trenton, not hearing, his parole officer in Trenton, and he couldn't be late. And all the way, and the Reverend, who to me is one of the most fascinating characters, the Reverend is constantly quoting scripture. Jesus in your heart and your mind, he's going to take care of you, everything's going to be fine. But I looked over at him, and a look in his eye was just pure evil. This sinister look in his eye, and I'm like, this man's he's covering something really, really serious. So we drive up. I had to ride the entire way to Trenton with these 3 wonderful people, like over here.
Were you scared?
I can't say that. You're a Camden kid, you've seen it before.
Yeah.
So, but are you apprehensive? Yeah. I mean, the guy driving the train, the engineer, he's looking in his rearview mirror, and I'm looking at him going, get the fuck in here. And he comes in, hey, what's going on,
Right.
And then everybody just calmed down. But I listened to these voices, these 3 voices, and I listened to these 3 stories. And they were just fascinating. I mean, like, he was yelling at, the Jameer character was yelling at Willow because she's like, I gave the kid a hot dog before we left. And he's like, what kind of breakfast is a hot dog? Like, what is this? And then he starts talking to the other people on the train. You believe this, bud?
Yeah.
So we get to Trenton. I go to the rally. It was fun, I put it away. Just locked up here. The following summers, that was February and June, we went to Puerto Vallarta for a week. I kind of follow Tennessee Williams around the world. Wherever he goes, I go. So I wanted to go to Puerto Vallarta, and we went, and I got down there, and the first night after my tequila wore off, there was, we were looking over the cove of Puerto Vallarta, and there was lightning coming from both ways, and this violent thunderstorm, and the curtains blowing in very gently. And I heard voices below, and below there was a truck of Mexican soldiers in full body armor with M16s. And all of the danger of that play came back, and the heat of Puerto Vallarta made this play hotter. And I just sat down and started writing the voices. And then next thing you know, the story just started to emerge when I said, oh my God, this is the story I have to tell, because this is a question of faith. I have to put somebody else on this thing. And then I thought about creating the character of Jamie, sitting on the train just minding his own business, listening to earbuds, until they finally push him to the hilt, and then he makes the big claim that he's Christ.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, you're crazy. The Reverend thinks he's even crazier and starts screaming blasphemy and all that.
Yeah.
But as this train continues, it gets stuck in a tunnel. Now there's no tunnel on the River Line. But for dramatic purposes, the train gets stuck in a tunnel, they lose all power, the heat rises, and you get to see these characters, these 4 characters, just completely come from the inside. And you get to see them emerge.
Yeah.
And you get to see all of these fears and all of these, everything through fear came out of them.
Yeah.
And you got to learn the history of the Reverend, that he actually shot 2 kids in the face in a drug deal that went bad back years ago and found God in prison. You get to find out about Willow, who's actually from Wayne, Pennsylvania, who's been on the street living with Jameer, not on the street, but living with Jameer in Camden. And then, as he says to her, the famous line, well, you know, she just goes, really? I'll just go home. Really?
Yeah.
You're going to go home, back home to Lily White, Wayne, Pennsylvania with
That'll
me and
be
the
easy.
Reverend?
Right.
Your mother's going to take us and all of your kids, if you can find them all.
Right. And as flawed as these people are, there's still a real deep humanity in them, and you feel and sympathize and empathize with the characters too.
I'm glad to hear you say that. With Jameer, the hardest core, the toughest guy, the one who, you know, you're like, this guy, well, there's nothing there until he tells you why he doesn't believe in God, why there's no God, when he tells the story of his grandmother who took him to the Prince of Peace Baptist Church every week, twice a week, who loved God and said, I'm going to train, you 2 boys are going to learn the Lord with me, you're going to go to church, you're going to go to church, you're going to be good people. And like he says, what did God do to her? He gave her cancer. And she died at 89 pounds in Cooper Hospital. What kind of God would do that?
Yeah.
So all of this is coming to earth. And you, though, as the audience are watching all of this, and you also are trapped on the train. Because the original version of the play, I had 2 acts. When he announces he's Christ, I cut it. And I brought it back. And then John Doyle, our friend who runs Iron Age Theater in Norristown, came to the reading. And John Doyle said, Joe, you can't let him off the train. The audience has to be trapped.
Yeah. There's a claustrophobia that you want to create.
He was absolutely right.
Yeah.
So now the play is one long hour and 15-minute, one straight through shot. But it's all another theme of being everybody's trapped in the worlds that they're in. But you as the audience, when you leave the play, whatever you have determined is the answer in this play is the answer. Is he Christ? If you think he is.
Maybe.
Is he a crazy cutter? Because you see the scars. When he pulls the scars up, he's got scars. Well, is that stigmata as he claims, or is he a cutter?
Yeah.
Because Willow also shows her scars,
Right.
and she's a cutter.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting the way that she morphs kind of into a Mary Magdalene character in the play. That if you're really buying this as Christ, the only one who stays with him at the end is Mary Magdalene on her knees crying as he's laying on the ground.
Yeah.
So it's up to the audience to determine the ending, and that's what I really love about the play. And you know, I don't watch my plays more than once or twice. I'm all through the rehearsal process, and it's like, okay, I'll watch the audience. I don't watch the plays. I watch the audience. I'll listen for things. But this one, every night I would just get there and say, okay, because we had such incredible actors with, you know, Michelle
Really
Pauls and
did.
Damian Wallace, and you know, like show me what you got for me tonight. Because every night there was something cool going on stage.
Something different. So guys, let's take a look at Express Tracks.
Just trying to be funny, babe. That's all. Just trying to be nice.
Hey, no, maybe. It's gonna be a while till we get to Trenton. You wanna grab a smoke and wait for the next train?
No, come on.
Come on, the next train will be like
I said
20
no.
minutes.
Look at it. Over there thinking. Thinking real hard. Probably going to Trenton, but thinking, maybe I should get off now and leave this nigga on the train.
Come on, baby, stop.
That's what you thinking?
Yeah?
Huh? You think about getting off? Or if you do, maybe I might get off and have that cigarette after all. Then when you'll be. In my day, people didn't use that word either. What? What word? You know damn well what word.
I think I'm getting a
Sit
cigarette.
down. What you be looking at?
Leave Lane alone, son. He's not bothering you.
Nah, he ain't bothering me with his mouth, but he sure is with his eyes.
Leave him be.
Hey,
Jesus.
I said what you looking at.
Nothing.
Look like you're looking at something to me.
I'm just looking over, that's all.
But you don't like what I'm doing?
Hey, baby, stop, you know? Come on, you don't want the cops to kick us off again. Remember?
It's not up to me to say.
Well, you sure be looking over here like you was.
I didn't mean anything. Have a good morning.
What?
Have a good morning.
You too, sir. Sorry, he's just tired, that's all.
Hey, don't be apologizing for
Okay,
it.
because
But don't beg